Hey, in this episode, we're going to be jumping into what is an appraisal? How do you actually value a home correctly? Coming from an expert. We got Amos Archer in the studio here, and he's going to be talking about how to value your home correctly. So stay tuned.
Hey guys, welcome to The Buzz Coffee and Real Estate. Today we've got Amos Archer in again. He's an appraiser here in the Burlington area, and he's going to be talking about how he comes up with his values, telling us how to really help us learn how to do our jobs better, at the same time being able to make sure that things line up in the end results when lenders are sending out appraisers. So, yeah, kind of give us some heads up here. What does that look like to start the value process? I know one thing you had mentioned to us is square footage is what we look at, but it's probably the wrong thing to look at. So what should we be looking at?
Yeah, so when an appraiser values a home, they are not going off of a strictly dollars per square foot approach. You can't take the square footage of the home and, or you can't take a recent sale and divide the square footage of the home by the cost of the property and then derive a dollars per square foot to take to another property and say, okay, well, it's got this many square feet, so based on that, it's got to be worth this. You might be able to get away with that in certain communities, but an appraisal is going to look at kind of a more nuanced view, and it's going to break down, hopefully, all the major value components of a property and adjust for them based on these value components rather than the thing as a whole. Gotcha. So dollars per square foot might be a really fast way to price out a property, but it's not a very accurate way.
Gotcha.
One example that I would use would be if you've got two homes next door to each other that are even kind of similar in square footage, or what we would call it GLA, the gross living area. That's your heated square footage of the whole thing that's above ground.
Gotcha.
But one of them is on 5 acres and one of them is on 2 acres. Then your dollars per square foot's already going to be skewed. What if one of them has 4 bathrooms and one of them has 2 bathrooms? It's going to be skewed again. What if one of them has granite countertops in the kitchen and the other one has the Formica countertops? Like, the more details you get into, the less accurate that dollars per square foot becomes. Gotcha. Pretty quickly.
Wow.
So what we do, if you get an appraisal report and look, there's a grid called the sales comparison approach. And that is, especially in our region, predominantly how we value a home. We have a very strong rental market, but we do not have strong sales of rentals. So in other areas, you might be able to value a home based on what the income potential is, especially out here in Alamance County. We're kind of rural. That figure is kind of hard to support. The other way that you could do it without the sales comparison approach is the cost approach. What would be the cost to build this home, and what's the depreciation? That's a lot less accurate than you might think. That's probably the least accurate way
especially
to value
right
a house. Now. Yes, because that cost to build keeps going up. Right now the market's kind of stalled, so I occasionally have to do the cost approach, but I hate doing it because to me it's just a completely unreliable number. Anyway, so the sales comparison approach is predominantly how we value a property.
Gotcha.
That on that grid, you'll have a column for your subject, you'll have a column for your comps, and as an appraiser, I can add as many comps as needed to demonstrate the value of this property. Lenders often put specific requirements on those specific properties that we use. Like they need to have closed within a year. And then hopefully the amount of variation between what we're using and the subject is pretty small. So we're not just necessarily using the house next door that sold yesterday, even though in an ideal world, the best comp would be an identical house next door that sold yesterday. But sometimes the difference between those homes is so great that we don't want to use that as the comp. And if we're doing our job well, should explain the logic of why we picked these comps in the comments. But anyway, so we get these comps in the report and we break them down. We've got a space for the acreage, for the age, for the quality, the condition, the square footage, the bedrooms, the bathrooms. Then we get down into heating and air, porches, garages, and then there's just amenities. Some people put fireplaces in there. I don't think that in our market, fireplaces really are adding or detracting value. I think they're just kind of a fact. But nobody's heating their house primarily with a fireplace anymore. So it's not, they're decorative, and I don't think people are paying more or less. So I don't even put that in the sales grid anymore. But things like fences, swimming pools, a finished room over the garage that isn't connected to the home, those would all be amenities that we would also be adjusting for, and those would go down in that grid. And then when we've got those in the grid, we're looking to make adjustments for each specific area based on what value we can attribute to that specific area, and we derive that from the market. So that's why it's a lot more tedious and time-consuming than just going, okay, this is a 2,000 square foot home at $150 a square foot. It should be worth this. So we get this grid. We have to make adjustments. And I will say we do adjust for square footage in here, but we confuse a lot of people when they look at what our adjustments per square foot are. Because let's say that we've got a subject property that's 1,000 square feet, and comp one is 1,100 square feet. So there's a 100 square foot difference, and we're adjusting at $50 a square foot.
What?
And every realtor I know goes, wait, it's worth a whole lot more than that per square foot. It is, but when you break that down as a component and you take out what the acreage adds and what the garage adds,
You're individualizing.
we're individualizing. That's a great way to put it. So we're doing a dollars per square foot adjustment, but it's much smaller than what would encapsulate the whole property.
Gotcha.
And then, what's a garage worth? Well, that depends on the market. And that's true of every category I'm talking about. But to use a garage as an example, when I first started, I would adjust $5,000 per garage bay.
Okay.
Say, this in 2012, this one-car garage is worth $5,000 less than a two-car garage. Now, I think that figure's probably low, depending on the neighborhood. So we are going to look at sales that come from hopefully as close to the subject as we can. But in certain circumstances, maybe we're going farther away to find another neighborhood where homes are selling for about the same thing.
Gotcha.
And then we're going to say, okay, I don't have a good example in the subject's neighborhood, but over here, we're in the similar price point. We're in similar days on market. Seems like it's a similar neighborhood for that reason. I do have an example of a one-car garage versus a two-car garage. And actually, over here, it looks like people are paying $15,000 per garage bay. So I'm going to come attribute that over here, and that's going to be how I get my adjustment.
Wow.
So
That's interesting.
theoretically, we're doing that for each component.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's more complicated
Yeah.
than we typically would do. And
That's
and I'm really, for our purposes, I'm not even sure that we need to go that complicated.
Sure.
Because a lot of times we really are giving someone a range. I mean, you guys are trying to give
Nail
them
the
a number. And I know Zillow's estimate gives a number, which actually is a range. If you dig into that a little bit, it's a huge range. And then they pick a random number because that's really good marketing. But
Or it's in the middle.
we're always communicating, if we're smart, if we're doing it correctly, hey, this is the range of what we could see your house realistically selling in. And then based on how quickly you want to sell it and what your motivations are outside of just making as much money as possible, we'll pick a number somewhere in that range to help fit your needs. So, but that's good for me to know how you're defining all of that. Now, let me ask you a question. This has always perplexed me. I'll have an appraisal come in. Sale price on the house is $410,000. And magically, that appraiser has
Always
come up
hits
with a
that number.
value of $410,000
On the dot.
on the dot. Now, I'll also have, and I've not dug into it to see, is Mike doing this and is Bill doing this or anything, but then sometimes I'll have appraisals that come in and say, it's not worth $410,000. It's worth $411,874.14.
On the dot.
On the dot. And it just makes me wonder. I mean, I've always kind of explained this as like just a difference in the personalities of some appraisers, but do you have any kind of clarity on why some of them seem so incredibly precise and why some of them just fall right on the sale price?
So in an appraisal where you see the value number, it says a bunch of verbiage and says, I certify, blah, 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 blah. My opinion of value is this number.
Okay.
We actually are also coming up with a range of values on that sales comparison grid. Along that bottom line, comp 1 adjusted to 410,000. Comp 2 adjusted to 400,000. Comp 3 adjusted to 420. So we look at that, and then we also weight each comp. Comp 1 is next door to the subject. It's the same floor plan. There are no adjustments whatsoever. It's sold for 410. That's really good indicator of what the value is right there.
Gotcha.
So maybe we put the heaviest weight on that, and each appraiser weights comps differently.
So that would be a bit of an art form there.
Yes.
Okay.
And here we're in the land of opinion.
Yeah. Okay.
I've got my range.
Gotcha.
That hopefully I've derived as accurately as possible,
Okay.
and I can prove this is why I've made my adjustments.
Okay.
But here's my range, and now we're in opinion territory.
Okay.
Number 1 is most similar. It has 0 adjustments.
Okay.
So I'm gonna put the most weight on that, possibly 90%.
Okay.
These other 2 sales in the neighborhood, they're less recent. Maybe they're more similar though. Maybe like they both have updated kitchens or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. So I've got a reason to weight them as well, or the lenders required 3 comps.
Okay.
But the fact of the matter is I trust number 1 most.
Gotcha.
So let's say I put 90% weight on that, 5% weight on the other 2.
Gotcha.
I wind up at 410.
Okay.
And because
you don't have a reason not to value it at 410 is what you're saying.
Right.
You've as well as the math can work out, you've got a range. The agreed upon contract price falls well within that range, and the highest weighted properties are all right there.
Right.
Okay.
And there are some really kind of easy to price, easy to appraise neighborhoods that we can probably all think of.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, for sure.
You get condos in certain condo complexes where everything is selling for the same amount. If the market's stable and it's identical to everything around it, probably the agent is going to list it appropriately, and your buyer is going to come in and look around and be like, "This is appropriate."
Right. And the value is easy to sell to the seller. Agents like, well, the last 7 of them that have come in all sold within $2,000 of each other, so this one's going to sell. And they're like, okay, well, you're right.
Right.
They're not going to try to overprice it. So yeah.
That's the easy side of things.
Okay.
At which point, maybe the appraiser lands directly where the purchase price is because that best reflects the market.
Okay.
That being said, I think the number of times that I exactly hit the purchase price is very low. And it's for a couple reasons. One, I'm not supposed to take the contract into consideration as far as what my opinion of value is. My opinion of value is what does the market say this home is worth?
Yeah.
That is a range, and maybe the contract is within that range, but maybe maybe the least similar sale is the one that is the closest to that contract value. Maybe the most recent sale is significantly lower, and it's the most similar. So maybe I've got market evidence that says, it's kind of within that range, but it seems a little high. Based on my weighting, I don't get there. I do say that as an appraiser, I don't have the perfect comps most of the time, and I'm not God. I don't know what this is actually supposed to
Down
come
to the
in
penny,
at.
yeah.
But I've got a pretty good idea based on my information. So I will never be as precise as that $408,325. I keep things at thousands.
Okay.
I think that nobody can be that precise. And I would even go so far as to say, really, should probably be within the 5,000s to be the most accurate. Because is it going to sell for 410 or 411? That's really a matter of opinion. Which is when I rely on my weighting of my comps, my adjusted comps, and that's how I get there.
Which is nice because we're using about that $5,000 increments, hey, we think it's going to sell realistically 415 to 430. We could price it at 420. We could price it at 425. So that's good that we're kind of thinking on the same page as far as. Very rarely are we going to be able to say it ain't worth 112. It's worth 110.5.
Right. Nobody can say that.
Yeah. Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
So when you're going into it, and like Acreage is of course one that we run into all the time. In different acreages, different areas, all the things. But let's say you got a house on 6 acres and there are no comps. Like there's just nothing to go, hey, because we run this all the time. It's like, there ain't been a house that's sold even close to like what this
out
house
in the county, nothing within 4 miles, all of that.
So like what happens in those situations? Does the distance get bigger? Does the years get bigger? Like what do you guys do? Because that's a big one for us.
My distance will get bigger before my time gets longer.
Gotcha.
Now, I will say our market has been roughly stable for the last year.
But the year before that,
no such luck.
Yeah.
We just come out of a period where prices were increasing hand over fist every time you turned around. So the most accurate was the most recent.
Yeah.
And even that was probably a little behind where it was because it sold yesterday and today things have already gone up.
Yeah.
So if I go back any more than a year right now, I'm running into prices that were probably lower than they are right now. So the most recent data is always the best, and that's why I'll expand my distance first.
Gotcha.
Occasionally, I do have to go back. Sometimes this happens with unusual properties or high acreage or unusual in some way, shape, or form. But then I've got to go and I've got to say, okay, well, acreage has increased this % over the last 3 years. So I've got to apply that adjustment to the acreage as well. It just gets really complicated.
Which can be complicated because with land, is it fenced pasture? Is it just random forest?
Does it perk?
Is it like this, or is it relatively stable? There's a lot of factors with land.
Right.
It's tough to value land.
It is. Land is one of those things that I rely on a range of value. And then when I'm looking at my sales comparison approach, we've got this thing we call paired sales analysis, where if I've made all of the things equal, and this house over here has 5 acres, and I'm adjusting at $10,000 per acre, and it's just wonky. I'm like, okay, I think my acreage adjustment is wrong. If I give it $15,000 an acre, it comes in line with these other sales that are more similar. That's paired sales analysis, described very loosely. So that would be like, I would use my land sales data paired with what the sales comparison approach is telling me is appropriate. But to your question of would I expand my distance, yes. For rural properties, I think Fannie Mae allows us to go out 25 miles.
Oh, okay.
Ooh, wow.
Which for rural properties or like your log homes, those don't sell very often in our area. When somebody builds one, they stay in it. So when one does sell and you've got to appraise it or they're going to refinance, you really do have to, I might be looking on the other side of Greensboro, which for the viewing audience is quite a ways away from us. It's 20 miles.
Well, different county, different school systems, different proximity
Locations
to large urban areas. There's a lot of factors in there. Yeah.
And then you get more market research on top of that that you've got to do to prove that it really is an apples to apples situation, or to make adjustments to change that apple into an orange or whatever you need to do.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, we're probably going to have to wrap it up here as far as digging into this, because I don't want to go too deep, but we've got other episodes that we're going to do too. So did you have any other kind of last minute questions on this particular one topic?
Yeah, sure. So I'm more or less asking for myself. So I'm going to give you a scenario. This is a personal scenario. So I bought a house, right? I get it for $350,000. And I'm asking more for the investment side of it. So we buy it for $350,000. It's a trashed house. Like there's stuff everywhere. It needs to be fully renovated, everything. All right, and then we come in and we renovate it, fix it up, so forth. And it has a basement, which is another element that I know adds some weirdness to it. when I got my appraisal back, they appraised me right at market value, right on the 350 marker on the dollar. And I was like, okay, it's kind of what I figured would probably happen, because it's an unusual. Now that it's fixed up and we've done all this work on it, and the land's been somewhat cleared out. It's just been a lot of those things. How do I even, because there is no comp, right? Like, I don't have a comp. My house is 3,700 square foot on 6 acres. There ain't one of those around me. Now, there are some 20-acre lots, and there's some other things, but there's nothing that I can find that would even be close. So in that scenario, how would I even try to get a value, if I was trying to sell that property or something?
You would start by looking for the most similar property you could find.
Okay.
On some acreage, hopefully.
Even if it was geographically quite a ways away.
Yeah, the closer the better.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, let's say you're in Snow Camp. I have no idea where you live.
I'm in Witsit. Just
Okay.
that they're going to give you a...
So Witsit, it's on this side, on the east side of Guilford County.
Yeah.
And let's say that you've got to go to, I don't know, Pleasant Garden, Climax
Gotcha.
to get a comp.
Yeah.
That's probably still preferable than going into Orange County,
Gotcha.
even though Orange County might physically be closer.
Mm-hmm.
You're going 2 counties away. There's a whole different school system, whole different tax structure.
Sure.
So in a lot of ways, staying within your county is probably still preferable in that scenario.
Okay.
But maybe you can't find it. Maybe Orange County is the closest place that you can find one that you're like, hey, this is a dead ringer.
Gotcha.
It's within 200 square feet of my home. It has a basement that is or is not finished.
Yep.
It's on 6 acres. It's easier for me to figure out what the difference between Orange County is and Guilford County
Gotcha.
than it is to make all the adjustments. That might be one thing that you could do. Or maybe you find the house that is the same, it's within 300 square feet above grade. It also has a fairly similar basement, but it's not on any acreage. It's on less than 1. So then you might be able to take another property and figure out how much is acreage adding to that home.
Gotcha.
Apply that to yours.
Okay.
But
And
really,
if you did both approaches, then it would give you 2 data points that you can maybe
say, okay,
join
somewhere
together.
in here.
Yeah.
I've got this range now that I feel like it's pretty accurately within this spot.
Gotcha.
It's tough for these unusual properties.
Yeah.
I hate those assignments as
Yeah.
an appraiser.
I'm
I would much
sure.
rather do a subdivision home. But finding something similar gives you at least some basis to make an informed decision.
Gotcha.
Or, I get asked a lot about swimming pools.
Yeah.
If you can find a home that's in a similar kind of price range and that has a swimming pool, and find something that's as identical as possible to that house without a pool, you can be like, oh, that looks like it's adding $50,000 to that property, which is
Gotcha.
very high for a pool,
Yeah.
for the record.
What is a normal, like 20 grand, 30 grand, somewhere in that range?
I don't know.
0.
It's hard to give a range without, because anytime I give any sort of value, I think I'm supposed to have a work file or something. But so a range might be 0 to 100, but I think a lot of times what I'm seeing on specific assignments, if we're talking about kind of a high-end home, it might be a $50,000 pool. Maybe it's not in a square. It's shaped like a bean and has a hot tub and a waterfall and all this. Maybe that adds 75.
Yeah.
But I've got to be able to prove it no
Gotcha.
matter what I do. And I cannot throw a number at it and be like, that seems to work.
Yeah.
I've got to have some market evidence. I did a house the other day, very small home in a very old neighborhood. The house itself was 50 years old, and it was one of the newest houses in the neighborhood.
Oh, wow.
It had an in-ground pool. It was like a less than 1,000 square foot home. I found 0 comps within 5 miles that had a pool that were anywhere similar to that. So I wound up going way out. I found something that was 400 square feet larger, but it had an in-ground pool. And when I adjusted it, it added $0 for it to have a pool compared to what was in the neighborhood around it and compared to the subject. So that home's pool was worth $0.
Wow.
But you've got to have market evidence to be able to say that. And if someone were to come in and list that home, I imagine they would say, oh, well, in that county, a pool is at least $15,000.
Yeah.
Well, not in that specific neighborhood.
Wow. That's crazy.
Well, we've also said things to people that, oh, if I remodel my home, or could I sell it for more if I put a pool in, And so there's very much that sort of thing where we'll say, okay, these are what we see that appraisers are actually paying attention to. These are things that might help your home sell faster or potentially create multiple offers on the house or something along those lines, but not really going to actually raise much of the value of the home.
Right.
It's more of just an appeal thing. And certainly if we transition into a buyer's market where there's tons of inventory out there, this is not going to help your home sell for more. It'll just help it sell. And we haven't seen that. Maybe one day we will. We're still quite a ways away from it. But yeah, just as far as being able to distinguish between those two things of actual value and not. So.
What would you say are like, if you could say 5 things that would be like, hey, this does add value, what would you say some of those things would be? I mean, like, as far, because that's the question we get all the time. Well, should I put granite in or not? Should I redo the bathroom or not? Should I, are those things valuable or are they really not? And so
the first thing I would say is it is hard to spend money on a house in a way that you're going to get more back than what you spent.
Gotcha.
It can be done, but especially as a homeowner who's not doing the work themselves, that's paying somebody else to do it, it is hard to come in and be like, if I add granite, I'm going to get twice as much as I spent back. Sometimes you can, but you've got to be very careful not to exceed what the market expectation is for that home.
That's right.
I had a homeowner at one point that was like, hey, I want to put in a pool so I can sell it for more. Would he sell it for more? Yes. Would the cost of putting in a pool be 4 or 5 times what he would get for that pool? Yes. So it really wasn't a cost-effective
20 cents
decision.
on the dollar.
Yes, yes. So I would say right now in our market, I feel like our generation that's really come into buying homes, we're not as handy as our parents, so we don't want to have to do any work. So a turnkey home goes a long way, and we've just come off of a period where people bought their homes for a lot less than what they're selling them for. So it may actually make sense to really remodel the kitchen and the bathroom, because you might get that money back just because you bought lower.
Gotcha.
But if we stay stable for the next 10 years, that's really not going to be a scenario in the future. So my advice is always make the improvement while you can enjoy it, have the house that you want, and then when you sell it, you've gotten your enjoyment out of it, whether or not you get your money back.
Gotcha.
However, if you do have a home where there's an obvious physical flaw, like a hole in the floor or drywall that needs to be patched or just painted even, doing that is going to raise your value, or at least it's going to allow a buyer to come in and be like, I don't have to do any work to this house, so I'm going to jump on this, and I'm actually willing to fight somebody for it and bid up.
Gotcha.
I think updated kitchens generally help a house sell faster and for more.
Sure.
Bathrooms, same thing. But I can't necessarily put a dollar amount on what that
But you're
does.
not going to say for every dollar you spend on remodeling your kitchen, you're going to make $1.10 to $1.20.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, the things we would go in and say, okay, you got ratty floors. Your carpet smells really bad. Your
Those things are
paint on your
definitely
walls.
deductible.
Yeah, those sorts of things that are
Right.
fairly inexpensive, but are not like ripping out kitchens and baths and sticking new ones in. And I agree with you completely. You don't do those just to sell it. Do it because you want to enjoy it, and then sell it when you're ready to sell it. Yeah,
Right.
that makes a lot of sense.
But any deferred maintenance, fix it. And, my wife and I, we bought a condo that when we bought it, every room was painted a bold color.
Oh yeah, it's like the Skittle house.
Yes, and every room felt small and tight, and we hated it. So the first thing we did is we came in and we painted it.
So, question, we're kind of, you said a minute ago you skirted the question, but let's say I have a bathroom, right? It's a 90s bathroom. It's the standard yellow colors that we used to see, not paints, but wood. It's got, maybe some type of solid surface, but it's not granite or quartz or something like that. And you've got a, standard toilet and, a shower that's maybe the plastic versus like a tile. you know, if I'm talking to my seller and I say, hey, you know, you could renovate this and probably get some money out of it, would you say, from your perspective, hey, yeah, do the tile because that's going to add value? Or would you say, hey, you know, I probably wouldn't do much, maybe just paint it and it's probably going to look up to date or whatever. So like, how do we kind of maybe guide that person to give them the most bang for their buck?
I think the ideal answer would be, what do your comps tell you?
Okay.
If you have the ability to get the data from the neighborhood, you can say, hey, this is a ranch style home. Other ranch style homes I see in the neighborhood that are kind of similar in square footage, it seems like having an updated bathroom, they are tending to sell for X number of dollars more. Might be able to say, hey, you know, you can get $5,000 more out of it if it's updated. Maybe there's, you know, some repair that you can do that is $5,000 or less that gets us to that point. It might be worth doing.
Okay.
If you've got, which what I'm about to say is the thing that baffled me a couple years ago when our market was crazy. All of a sudden, I was having homes where there was granite in the kitchen and there was formica in the kitchen, and there was almost no discernible difference there for a minute.
Gotcha.
Because people were so desperate.
Yes.
It was like, if you've got a 1,500 square foot home, I'm going to pay, you know, $1 million for it, regardless of what it looks like, because I just want a place to put my kids.
Yeah.
Then it doesn't matter and you shouldn't do anything. So I would always try to base that as much off of data points as I could.
Gotcha. That's helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Well, we've gotten a ton of good info. Thanks again for digging into all of this. And we are going to get Amos back on because we really want to jump into a little bit of what he's seeing as far as what is the market doing, you know, from an appraiser's perspective. They specialize on numbers. So stay tuned. We're going to dig into what he's seeing in the market, especially the local market, which is the toughest to find info on. So we'll get his opinion on that. So
cool deal.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, guys, subscribe to the channel and like it. Leave us a comment, and we'll see you guys in the next one.